When people hear the word art, they sometimes dismiss it as something that's not for them. Maybe they think it's too hard or requires talent. Maybe they've had a bad experience with art or art teachers that turned them off, or maybe they think art is frivolous, just not that interesting. But here's the thing. Brain Smoothies use art as it's never been used before, and our research-informed instructional design is based on decades of scientific research. So, if you really want to get to know about the relationship between art, brain, and mind, we need to take a moment and explore the science that informed the Brain Smoothies method. A few decades ago, in research institutions, a scholarly overlap began to occur between the fields of neuroscience, arts education, and psychology. Arts educators had been studying a certain phenomenon that when individuals are engaged in making visual art, they often experience a mental release or shift to a different mode of thinking, originally believed to occur in the right side of the brain. This right-brained shift, or R mode, has been embraced by artists and educators who recognize that visual art is a mechanism for this perceivable mental shift, and that when this happens, our brains behave very differently. We lose track of time. We think holistically, considering things as they relate to each other in a big picture rather than in pieces, and we have intense focus in a way that creative ideas can emerge. Much of this work was informed by Nobel Prize winner Dr. Roger Sperry, who studied the functions of the left and right brain hemispheres. Then, arts education scholar Dr. Betty Edwards made the connection that different parts of the brain are activated by visual art processes when the shift to R mode occurs. Dr. Edwards described the brain as having two ways to perceive and process. One, verbal and analytic, which she attributed to the left side of the brain, and the other, visual and perceptual, which she attributed to the right. Today, modern brain imaging has moved us beyond the simplistic left-right models of the past, and yet there's still much to be explored, especially this notable power of visual process to cause a mental shift. Around the same time Dr. Edwards was studying art and the brain, similar observations were taking place at Stanford University by psychologists studying art and mind. Professor Mihai Csikszentmihalyi was studying happiness, and specifically happiness at work. Dr. Csikszentmihalyi was intrigued by how artists seemed to be able to work hard all day, completely absorbed in what they were doing, and yet emerge from that work feeling refreshed. Unlike the typical experience of a workday by the general population, coming home exhausted and needing a break, something that many of us can relate to, Csikszentmihalyi noticed that the artists experienced a mental shift similar to the one Edwards described, where they would lose track of time and be completely and fully engaged in their work, only to emerge from that work feeling mentally energized. After hours of work, they didn't need a break. They felt renewed. For these artists, something about the process of making art created the conditions for intense focus, but more importantly, it provided a mental retreat, a reward in and of itself. In interviews, artists and others referred to this experience as being in the flow, which Csikszentmihalyi simplified into the concept that we know as flow today. What's important here is that there have since been decades of studies on the phenomenon of flow as an optimal experience for focus, motivation, and attention. It's a well-accepted construct in the field of psychology, first observed in artists. When individuals are able to access a flow state, they enjoy a very positive mental experience described as a sense of ecstasy and at the same time, serenity. Did you get that? A sense of ecstasy and at the same time, serenity. In a world where mental burnout is a constant issue, being able to learn how to access a flow state could have a substantial impact on mental health. In schools, in the workplace, in your life. So pulling all the science together, we learned that engaging in visual art processes can create a shift into a different mode of thinking, and we understand the experience of that shift, which can include the optimal state of flow. We pull it all together into a pedagogical method centered on visual art process that provides a rest from the overused part of our brain and activates typically underused parts of the brain to access this very special, very sophisticated, yet readily accessible mental state. This not only provides relief from dominant thoughts, but also refreshes and focuses and revitalizes the mind. The cool thing is, we all have this in us. We just don't use it. I know I need a little more rest, focus, and energy. Don't you?